So I am going to be giving a message today. I'm going to be actually finishing our series on the School of Love, practical and spiritual guidance on deepening our most important relationships. And I want to spend a few minutes just recapping some of the messages that we've heard over the last, I think this is the 9th message, so over 2 months. I hope it's been valuable for everybody. I know it has been for us. So I just go through a few points. So the first message that Pastor Donia gave, maybe you remember, she talked about the 5 regrets, right? 5 biggest regrets that people have at the end of their lives. As someone did a survey or a study, and it was all focused around our relationships with God, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with our friends and our family, people that are important to us in our lives. The first one was that people wished that they had lived a life that was more true to themselves, not the life others expected of them. 2 was that they wished that they hadn't worked so hard and spent more time with family. 3rd was that they wished they had the courage to express their feelings. The 4th was they wished that they had stayed in touch with friends and in touch with friends. And the 5th was that they wished that they had let themselves be happier. And this was a really great message to just kind of set the tone for our whole series, because it really kind of put life in perspective and just like how important, maybe we don't realize it on like the day-to-day level, but at some point in our life when we come to really reflect on life, or we come to a moment where we can take a break from all the busyness and we think about what's most important to me and what I would have regrets about, these things come to mind. And so we don't, we want to think about them now, not later. Then after that, I gave a message on the spiritual reason for reconciliation. I talked about the foundation of faith, the foundation of substance, the importance of studying the Bible, especially the Old Testament, because although many things change in the world, and we live in a time of rapid change, there are some things that don't change. And those things are like what God expects of people and what God has asked his people to do in terms of being faithful, which I shared, when I look at our movement, when I look at all of your faces, there's so much faithfulness. Actually, there's no lack of desire to attend God and to be, a filial son to God. But sometimes we really become challenged to express that love or to express that commitment or conviction to actually within our own family or within our church family or to people in our lives that, are important to us. So being able to create harmonious relationships, to creating unity in the community, in our families, to forgive and to create reconciliation, these are foundational substance things. And they're the things that we need to do to really create substance in our lives. So that was the message that I gave then. Then Pastor Donia, she talked about acknowledging our parents. She talked about having gratitude for them. Even if we have unresolved issues with our parents or things that's hard to be grateful for, to at least recognize the value of having my life, having an opportunity in life to be able to create something, to be able to have a relationship with God, to be able to build something maybe better than what I came from. She also talked about taking the time to have conversations with people like our parents and to sincerely appreciate them, to thank them, and also for parents to take the time to sincerely appreciate our children, to tell them what we're grateful for, to tell them what we think their good characteristics, their strengths, to really appreciate, because life can go and we don't often take the time for these conversations, or maybe they're just too awkward. So another great message. Then I talked about the prodigal son. You may remember that. Talked about parental love and how being a parent is hard. And you only discover that once you become a parent yourself. And I learned that after I became a parent, I need to be more forgiving and to give more grace to my own parents, because we all make mistakes and we all have shortcomings, but we all do try our best. And we want to be also able to receive forgiveness and to receive grace from our kids and from the people in our lives when we inevitably do make mistakes of our own. I talked about how we start off with good intentions. We start off with a desire to be unconditional and to be loving, but sometimes we find ourselves stuck, it's like the song. And, we maybe in the story of the prodigal son, we might find ourselves in the shoes of the judgmental older brother, whereas maybe we wish that we were more like the loving, embracing father. And I shared about how, we have to make effort to, if we don't have people in our lives that are really like a parental figure, that we feel they embody that parental unconditional love, we have to seek out that influence in our lives. We have to find people who are more in touch with that. We have to get out into nature. We have to read God's word. We have to connect with God, because otherwise it's very easy just to be conditional. It's very easy to take things personally in our lives. And then Pastor Donia, she talked about cherishing your spouse, because even God can't produce love by himself. And God gave us a blessing to be able to, create a family. God gave us a blessing to be able to make beautiful relationships with people. And the husband-wife relationship is a very special relationship that doesn't exist in any other realm of relationship. So she really shared that we have to cherish those people in our lives. She talked about Adam and Eve, the first family, the first couple, how in their relationship there existed so much guilt and shame and blame. So we didn't get started on a very good footing. But when we connect with God and when we connect with higher power and higher purpose in our lives, it helps us to gain the strength and the power to be able to let go of when bad things happen to us or when we feel like we've been wronged and it's hard to forgive. Helps us. And she shared the story about how she was holding on to some things with me. I don't know if you remember that. You missed it if you weren't there. But that was kind of like a very difficult time in our marriage, the first few years. And, it was because of her effort to really let go and to connect with God and to embrace that spirit of forgiveness and what she really wanted in life, is a happy marriage and a happy family, then she could get that strength to let go of that. And that was really beautiful. And Andrew Love gave a great message. He talked about the power of conditions and some of the conditions that they've done as a family that's helped them to get through these 10 years, get them to where they're at. And he talked about the 777 method. He gave a lot of really great practical advice. When you're confronted with a difficult situation, he talked about, take 7 days to pray about the situation, to pray for strength to deal with the situation. Oh, no. The first day was 7 days of prayer. Second 7 days was to pray for the power to do the thing that you need to do, whatever it is. It's broad. And then the last 7 days of doing it, putting it into practice, and sharing and reporting what you're doing. And he talked about the value of intimacy, and how that's something that we don't really talk about in our culture so much. And we talk about love, we talk about sex, we talk about beauty. You can have this, you can have that. But actually what we really all want is intimacy, closeness, trust. And, sometimes they're very different things. He talked about having a vision for your marriage, and that we are, in many ways unqualified to even receive someone into our life. So just having that humility to recognize, wow, I'm blessed to have someone in my life that I can love and that loves me. And then I talked about the sibling relationships, and I talked about Cain and Abel, and how, when we look at in the stories of the Bible, these central figures, many of these pivotal moments was about Cain, Abel, brother to brother, or people in those positions having to reconcile, having to restore something. And if they could, then God's providence could take a step forward. If they couldn't, then God's providence often took a step backwards or was delayed in some way. And how actually our lives are, mirrors of that. We follow in those same footsteps in many ways. I don't know how much the greater providence, depends on my, personal decisions and my overcoming things. But I think that it matters for my family, my lineage, for our community. And I do think it matters to God as well. And learning how to relate to the people in our lives, our peers, our siblings, helps us to be able to embrace and understand all variety of different kinds of people that exist in the world. You remember I talked about how there's just a variety. Even if there was no such thing as a restoration or providence, God is a God of variety. God created so much variety in this world. He didn't have to create all the different types of creation. But I think God loves variety. And so we have to come to recognize there are many different kinds of people. And most of those people are different than us. So learning how to appreciate the differences is really, really important. And then last week, Pastor Donia talked about how their parents want their children to be better than them. And God is our ultimate parent. And even God, as Reverend Moon told us once, that even God wants his children to be better than him. And that's why God doesn't force us. God doesn't make us do anything, and God respects the decisions that we make. God respects our choices, because God knows at the end of the day, for us to really to inherit his co-creatorship, the lordship of creation, we have to do it on our own. We have to do it willingly. We have to make the choice, and he will help us. And she talked about how in her own life, seeing her parents change and grow has been such an inspiration to her, that she can be better. And I love that mindset, that thought, because so many times we think we have to try to fix people or change people. But actually, many times, if people see us change, then they'll take a lot more notice than if they just are being told. So anyway, these are all some points that have been shared in the last couple months in this series. I hope that there was something valuable there for each of you. I know that for us, it's been really good. Even though we're up here giving a lot of the messages, please don't assume that it means that we've got that all figured out. Actually, we're learning a lot from the whole process. We struggle in our relationships. We get stuck sometimes. We go through the same things that you guys go through. And we need to hear this content just like I think all of us do. So it's been really valuable for us, and we've really appreciated it. One thing that's really come across as we've been talking about all these different relationships, the parent-child relationship, the sibling relationship, the conjugal relationship, our relationship with God, our relationship to our parents as children, is that everything's connected, everything's related, and it's our ability to have those relationships in a healthy way that allows us to be functional, healthy, normal human beings that can go out and relate to the world in a positive way. Someone told me once, a mentor of mine, that there are no marriage problems. There are just unresolved childhood problems. And I was like, it kind of caught me off guard, but I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, there's probably a lot of truth to that. I'll probably discover as I get older. But our relationships when we're growing up in our families and today, they affect one another. They affect me in this moment. And we may not be able to do a lot about our experiences growing up. They happened, but we can recognize that they affect us, and we can heal from them, and we can make progress towards building healthier and happier families. And this is really important in our church too, because the church is a family. At least that's kind of the idea that we're striving for. And this is something that I really understood when I was studying Rick Warren's material, who's a megachurch pastor in Saddleback in LA. And he said that in 1 Timothy 3:15 refers to the church as the family of God. That family is the church of the living God, the support and foundation of the truth. God does not want his children growing up in isolation from each other. So he created a spiritual family on earth for us. Paul reminded us in Ephesians 2:19, you are members of God's very own family, and you belong in God's household with every other Christian. A Christian without a church family is an orphan. It is important to position the church as a family rather than an institution. Since the 1960s, Americans have become increasingly anti-institutional. The phrase organized religion is used contemptuously, yet people are also longing for a sense of family and community. The church, with all its shortcomings, is a really wonderful place to practice getting along with people that are very different than you. Church, and I really resonate with this, what Rick Warren is talking about. You know, we can treat the church like an organization or an institution, and we do programs, and we have budgets, and we have meetings and committees and all these things. We could do that. But for me, what inspires me about a church is that we come together under a common banner or a common, belief or cause. We're all children of God who are trying to make a difference in this world, trying to live the best we can, trying to make good families, trying to give something back to God. And there's much more. But that might be if I might go and talk with Sam or Johanna or Catherine or Jim or Mark, and I might find that outside of those common banner, we might not have almost anything else in common. But the church brings together people like that, and that's what I love about it. And it's a place where maybe you don't have a parental figure in your life. Maybe you don't have like a father figure, or maybe you don't have kids, or maybe you never had any siblings or anything like that. It's a place where you can go and you can find people who have a similar desire in life and be like, hey, can you be my mentor? Can you be my friend? Can you help me to be a better person? Can you keep me accountable? Can you encourage me when I'm discouraged? Even though we're different, maybe we might have different, beliefs about different things, and maybe we might have different politics or whatever, but to support each other on this journey of life. I think that's really precious, and I actually been amazed by how sometimes I feel closer to people in the church than I do my own family members at times. So it depends on the situation. But because the church is kind of like is a family, then we have to treat it like a family, and we can't expect it's just going to thrive because of policies or programs and things like that. We have to practice the same things that we would practice in our relationships with our brothers, with our sisters, with our parents. We have to try to forgive one another. We have to try to make unity. We have to try to work through the challenges and not give up on one another. At any given time in our lives, we're in different positions in relation to other people. We're always a child and a sibling or a peer, but also on top of that, as we grow, we become a spouse, a parent, a grandparent. These are the things that define who we are. And we didn't talk about grandparents very much, or maybe at all, actually. But my grandmother passed away this last week, actually. And we drove out to Illinois to attend her funeral. And it's interesting. I actually never really felt very close to my grandmother, even though we went and visited her fairly often. But in reflecting on her life, I was really grateful that my parents and then us, when in our adulthood, tried to make a lot of effort to visit my grandparents because even though I don't feel like I didn't feel so close to her, but I really appreciated that I had a grandmother that was alive and that I could spend time with, because it's just a different presence in your life to have a grandmother there. It's not like your parents or your kids. It's like they're at a very different stage of life that may seem almost unrelatable. Like, for as long as I've ever known my grandmother and my grandfather, they've been retired, right? They're like the stereotypical white American grandparents. They like to watch The Price is Right and Jeopardy and The Wheel of Fortune. And my grandmother likes to do crossword puzzles. My grandfather likes to listen to the police scanner. And they like to go to trips to Florida. And they like to eat lots of like Kraft American cheese and bologna sandwiches. It's like, I was like, well, this is amazing, you know? And there's a part of me that's like, I can't relate to that, you know? It's like, I'm not at that stage of my life. I don't understand it, whatever. But I, you know, as I grow older and I've become a parent and everything, I'm starting to appreciate more this kind of people in my life. I have this thing, I wouldn't call it road rage, I'd probably call it like road irritation, you know, like, I do get a little bit upset when I see people driving under the speed limit, or they're backing up out of a parking spot and they're just doing it really slowly. And often I will try to take a peek, who's driving? Are they who I think they are? And they're often old people, right? And I would get, depending on my mood that day, a little bit upset or a little bit frustrated, like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm in a hurry, you know, like, how can you be going under the speed limit? I'm going over the speed limit, like, and you're in the fast lane, you know, and but then this was just maybe a few weeks ago, when I knew that my grandmother was maybe ending the end of her life, but also I was just reflecting a lot. Recently, I've been reading a lot of books on near-death experiences, and if you're ever interested in like spirit world or like what happens when we die, like kind of more in like a first-hand, like personal sharing, these are really amazing stories to read about people's near-death experiences. And I was really reflecting on a lot of things, and it kind of occurred to me, why am I in such a hurry so many times? Like, is it really worthwhile for me to get somewhere like 5 seconds faster or like a minute faster? Like, if this guy would just get out of the road. And then I found myself doing it not just with older people, but also like my kids. Sometimes my kids get distracted and they're just standing in the doorway looking at something. And I'm like trying to get through the doorway. I'm like, get out of the way, you know? And for what, though? You know, I realize, wow, so I can get to where I'm going 5 seconds faster, you know? Is really life that urgent right now? Like, do I really have that little time? And I realized, no, I just need to chill out a little bit. I need to put my life in perspective a little bit. And I think that's something that I realized about my grandparents and my grandmother especially. She didn't seem to have any qualms with just taking her time and doing things slowly and enjoying life. And I think there's a lot to learn from that, because we can't really affect time, how quickly things are going to pass us by. And we also have no choice or say in how long we have on this earth with the people that we're with. And there's a lot to be said for just, I don't know, appreciating and valuing time. And I think that that's something that grandparents are generally very good at. They've lived a long life already, generally already in their 60s and 70s and 80s. And they know how they've already lived a lot of their life. And that kind of a presence, I realize, is very valuable. And I could really appreciate my grandmother for that. But it was hard to see my grandfather. He was very distraught. And, he has Alzheimer's, very advanced Alzheimer's. Like, actually, by the end of the day, he had forgotten the memorial service. But during the memorial service, he was just crying and just, they just celebrated their 70th anniversary. Imagine spending 70 years of your life with somebody and then they're just gone, right? So it was hard for me to see him in that place, but they had a lot of love as a couple, and I really appreciate. I feel like we've been blessed. We really wanted to get our kids out there so that we could all attend the funeral together, but it was kind of crazy. We left Thursday right after school. We drove through the night. We got there around 5 o'clock in the morning. We crashed on the floor. We went to the funeral and everything, and then we slept that night, and then we drove back here. And we got here about 9:30 last night. So it definitely was hard, but I'm really glad that we could go. It was beautiful. And when you go to somebody's funeral, you see their pictures, right, from when they were my age, or when they were like a teenager, or when they were a kid. All kinds of pictures of my dad when he was like 8 or 9 years old, right? It was really cool. And I even saw pictures of my great-grandparents when they were like 20 and 30 years old. And it really puts life into perspective. Like, that's going to be me someday. It's going to be all of us someday. So got to really appreciate the people that we have and the experiences that we're able to be blessed with. I'd like to share a quote from Reverend Moon about grandfathers. You can apply it to grandmothers too, I think. The grandfather is in the position to represent God. No matter how intelligent a young man may be, he cannot know all the secrets of this big world. Young people cannot know all the different secrets of life that come to us as we grow older. This is the reason the grandfather represents the history of the family. The grandfather is a precious teacher who passes on to the grandchildren all the wisdom he has acquired through the experiences he has accumulated during the course of his life. The world's oldest grandfather is God, so a life of receiving the grandfather's love and of living for the sake of the grandfather is a life of coming to understand God's love and living for his sake. We need to maintain such a tradition in order to open the secret storehouse of God's kingdom and receive his treasure of love. Any country that ignores its old people abandons its national character and ignores its roots. So I love the fact that our community is so diverse. We have people on all spectrums of the age. And I love that, because I know that you can go to some churches and you'll find only old people, or you'll find only young people, or you find only single people, or something like that. And we have a lot of variety, and I like that, because I think that resembles what a family looks like. Otherwise, I think it might be, a little bit boring. So, this family that we have, our nuclear families, our church families, they're there so that we can grow to become people that we go from being immature, we grow from being people who are being taken care of by others, to eventually being able to be a person who can put others' needs before our own. Even Rick Warren talks about, what does it mean to be a good pastor? Like, what kind of qualifications should you look for in somebody? And he basically said, look for someone who's a good family person, has a good family. So everything is connected. So I'm going to finish with one final quote. The most precious education takes place in the family. You won't find happiness and peace in some other place. The family is intended to be the kingdom of heaven. It would not matter if a person possesses incredible wealth and fame, or even possesses the whole world. If all is not right with that person's family, then he cannot be happy. The kingdom of heaven begins in the family. If a husband and wife are bound together in true love and they build an ideal family, this will connect directly with the world. So with that brings the conclusion of our series on The Family is the School of Love. I hope it's been valuable for you. I hope you've gotten something out of it. I thank you so much, and please join me in prayer. Dearest Heavenly Parent, we thank you so much for the grace that you show us every day, and the blessing, Heavenly Parent. When you created your children, you envisioned what kind of beautiful families they could grow up in, a beautiful world. And this world isn't that world that you envisioned, Heavenly Parent, but we can still see semblances of it in our families when there's harmony and when there's forgiveness and when there's reconciliation. We get glimpses of what that beautiful world was that you intended for us to grow up in and for us to experience just every day, all the time. And we pray, Heavenly Parent, that whatever challenges that we are experiencing in our lives or that we're confronted with, Heavenly Parent, that we can take some of the tools, some of the perspectives that we gain from this series, we can apply them, we can make our families better, we can make our community better, we can be a positive influence of change for all the people that we meet and in our society, Heavenly Parent. We know, some of us, we've, inherited a little bit of challenge, and some of us inherited a really difficult set of challenges, Heavenly Parent, but we know that with you all things are possible. We seek your guidance in our lives. We seek your strength, your support, your direction, that we can all, because we will all eventually get to the same place one day, Heavenly Parent, but we really pray for your guidance to help us to get there in one piece and as quickly as possible. And I thank you, and I offer this sermon to you on behalf of all our families here, and pray in the names of Michael and Donie Hendrick, a blessed Central family. Amen and adieu. Thank you.